The achievement gap is, and there's been a lot of talk about the achievement gap here in Clark County. When you look at our data, here's just some data around our gifted and talented identification percentages. You'll see that nearly 50% of all of our students in the school system are black students, yet that same classification of students represent 5% of our gifted and talented population. And you can see the rest of the data laid out here. Now, our identification program and how we identify students, we've had gifted and talented coordinators who have tried to use alternative methods to identify giftedness. Nonetheless, we have a gap, if you will, in terms of students who are in gifted and talented programming. And it's not so much about who's in GT and who's not and gifted and talented. It's truly about who has access to gifted and talented and who doesn't, who has access to rigor and who doesn't. When you take a look at our students who, as they matriculate through the school system, gifted and talented is then replaced with advanced placement. And again, you can see the gaps from a data perspective in terms of who's in our advanced placement courses and who are not in our advanced placement courses. Again, I think it's just it shouts that we have an equity issue, that we're not providing access and rigor to every single child in our school system. I've said this publicly, I'll say it here. Educational system should not be about getting a score. It's not about testing and getting a certain score. But we do know in 2018 that if you don't get a certain score, regardless if you want to get into the trades, if you want to become someone who works in a career right away or go to a four-year university, we do know that getting access to where you want to go in life depends on these types of scores, on the ACT and the SAT. It depends on those scores, regardless of what path you want to go. And this is the gap that we have with our ACT and SAT scores. So again, I know there's been a lot of talk in this school district about graduation. There may be young people who have graduated, but do they have access to doing whatever they want to do with their lives as a result of the rigor that they were exposed to instructionally? It may be the cruelest thing that we can do to a young person to say, you're a high school graduate, but you're not capable to access the path that you want to go down because you don't have the academic preparation.
That's a question on the previous slide.
Yes.
One more.
Oh, yes, sir.
So, in your opinion, what should those numbers be?
I believe that every child should have access to at least one AP course. Every child. Every child should have access. And it shouldn't be about getting a certain score on the AP. Shouldn't be about getting a 3 or above on the AP. But every child deserves to have at least, during their high school career, at least one AP course. Now, the way the College Board and AP is set up, every child can have access to it, and they are prepared. The Human Geography course, for example, that they offer through AP is a course, actually a College Board and AP set up that course to say we can introduce every child to a certain level of rigor that can be applied to a lot of different academic areas. So I would say at least every child should have at least one experience. Yes, sir. I've been going through a lot of slides. Are there any questions or thoughts? I'll try to conclude here so we can continue to have a discussion. This kind of gets to my opening statement as well. And this comes out of educational equity work. And educational equity work says that when the adults change in a school system, then the system changes. And then when the system changes, the children change. It doesn't go in reverse. It doesn't go where you have to say the children and families change, and then the system will change, and then the teachers will change. That's not how it works. That's not placing blame on anyone. That's not saying that it's someone's fault. But it does mean that we have to do something different. And the we are the adults. The we are the professionals. We have to approach our work differently. If we're truly about equity work, then how our adults approach their work will change the system if they do it differently. And then that will change student behavior, which will then change how we view urban education, how we view the Clark County School District, because we'll see a difference in scores. So the definition of AVID is, the district-wide definition is a commitment to align district instructional strategies, reframing academic expectations, and increase teacher capacity to support an equitable and rigorous learning environment for every student so that all have access to post-secondary success, whatever that pathway is. That's the definition of district-wide AVID. School-wide AVID is based on 4 components. It's based on school-wide instruction, having a more rigorous instructional strategy and toolbox available to you. So we're going to talk about Summer Institute in a second. When teachers go to Summer Institute, which is high-level professional development, they are taught instructional strategies that they can take back into the classroom immediately. That taps into critical thinking skills and collaboration and inquiry. It taps into higher-level thinking. School-wide systems addresses things like, what type of environment are we creating? Are we encouraging young people to think about their post-secondary success now in elementary school? Are we helping them think about their future? What does it look like? The leadership component is really critical. The leadership means that there is typically an AVID site team of teachers who are constantly meeting, at least monthly, to talk about how are we introducing stronger instructional strategies in our classrooms to make sure that it's equitable and rigorous for all. And then the culture gets back to how are we promoting a college and career readiness system and an environment for all students. So AVID Elementary reinforces academic behaviors early, build a foundation for early or easier transition to middle school and high school. It emphasizes study skills, organization, self-advocacy, and deeper learning or deeper level questioning. Elementary AVID also breaks it out in 3 different areas in terms of K2, 3-5, and 6-8. Secondary is really focused on high school. It helps young people access rigorous courses in a more deliberate way. It creates flexibility in terms of how you implement grade level courses and who's in those courses. And it impacts the entire campus. So for example, Cedar Shoals has decided that they're going to move into AVID school-wide at the 9th grade level. So their entire freshman academy will use AVID strategies next year. We talked about Wicker a little bit earlier in terms of what this all means. One of the highlights under writing is Cornell note-taking. Did any of you learn how to take Cornell notes when you were in school? Sure. Cornell note-taking is a strategy. And there's deviations of that strategy, but it helps young people organize their thoughts, but more importantly, it helps you kind of frame your writing. And there's a lot of different strategies that you'll see under each of these 5 categories. The Costa's level of thinking, the type of questions that teachers are asking, you use Art Costa, he's an educational philosopher. And Art Costa has said, well, there's different levels of, and here it is right here, there's different levels of how you can question things for students and how you build your lessons. And if you just stay at level 1 where you're listening, defining, describe, observe, you're going to get level 1 instruction and you're going to get level 1 answers. If you can take it to level 3, you're going to expand the critical thinking of students in a much deeper way. Now what happens with our gifted and talented students, our GT teachers, they're using Costa's level of questioning, and they're using level 2 and level 3 questions for those students. The students who are left in the classroom, because they're in the middle, or the students who are EIP students, they're staying at level 1. And so this is the beauty of AVID. This is where it closes the gap. Because if you're exposing all students to level 3 questioning, eventually you close that gap and you elevate the learning for all students. Mr. Davis?
Yeah, when a teacher has been trained in this process, do the lesson plans reflect it? I mean, can you look at the lesson plans and see, aha, I see these high-level order thinking skills. So are we changing what's expected of lesson plans?
So we're gonna ease into it. To implement AVID well, you should have a district director who's going to help build the capacity of each teacher who's using AVID strategies. You want to provide as much professional learning as possible. But it's not about you, since we're going to AVID now, you have to use these strategies. We don't want to ever be in that space. I think past initiatives, we've implemented that type of thinking of, okay, well, let's just be candid. You have a new laptop, you better use your laptop when the administration comes in, right? That's not the pathway we're taking here. We want to build people's capacity so they feel empowered and comfortable using those strategies. We believe that Summer Institute, and I'll talk about Summer Institute now, Summer Institute will encourage and inspire people to want to use those strategies in an effective way. So it's not about, here's the expectation, so show us. What happens is that AVID does an analysis of a school to see if those things are happening, and that's the role of the site, the AVID site team that I talked about earlier, and that leadership of teacher leadership. They will then come together and say, how can we make our faculty meetings not about checklists and things that you could probably read in a memo, but how do we use our faculty meetings for true learning and true growth professionally?
Didn't quite answer my question.
Okay.
But what I mean.
So let me say it this way. Teachers are not going to be expected to implement right away.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying, because we have a structure for lesson plans now, I think. I'm so dated, but is there a structure that we expect teachers?
It's not consistent across the district, sir.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Does AVID have like a kind of a structure of what a solid lesson plan looks like, or not particularly?
It's a tool and a strategy that will be available to people if they want to use it.
Okay.
I want to be very careful. I don't want to have any mandates or impose anything on people because we're moving to this college and career readiness system. Yes.
Will there be new curriculum adoptions that will be more aligned to this level of thinking? Or?
There's strategies.
Okay.
So
you take current curriculum and you apply the strategy.
You can use your current curriculum and apply it with AVID strategies. So think about it this way. AVID is about the instructional strategies that you use to implement your curriculum. It's not a new curriculum. AVID likes to say that they're a college and career readiness system where they empower teachers to use instructional strategies to convey their curriculum.
So you're just asking different questions or creating different conversations?
And so at Summer Institute, for example, what will happen is if your focus is being a math teacher at the 4th grade level, they have strands for 4th grade math teachers or elementary math teachers. They will say whatever curriculum you're using, because there are teachers from all over the country going to Summer Institute. So everyone's using different curriculums. It's not a top-down curriculum, but they're going to say if you're teaching 4th grade math, here are ways that you can pull out critical thinking for students. If you are a 10th grade English teacher, here are strategies that you can use instructionally that will help you convey your English curriculum in a more robust, rigorous, and engaging way.
So these strategies, are they unique to AVID? Teachers haven't been taught this in college, in education schools?
It's a really good question. I like to say that colleges of education across the country really don't teach teachers how to teach. You go through a program, and the program exposes you to what you need to learn to be in a classroom, But those strategies, typically those strategies come over time with veteran teachers. Veteran teachers, through the course of trial and error, they learn these instructional strategies. No, you don't go through a college of education and they give you a battery of instructional strategies that you can use.
But maybe our veteran teachers have
But over time, veteran teachers develop it, yes.
Dr. Mays,
Yes, sir.
I did have 2 courses that, I would say that they taught strategies of teachers, materials and methods of teaching that helped me utmost. Student teaching, and actually when I went in the classroom to be hired as a first-year teacher. And from what I understand, the partnership that we have with UGA, some of those same courses are the same courses taught, materials and methods of teaching.
I think colleges of education would say that they teach, to Mr. Bybee's point, they teach you a lot about John Dewey. And you learn a lot about what John Dewey had to say. And you learn about a lot of structures. But colleges of education, it's rare for them to teach you. So how do you reach a classroom of 30 fifth grade kids and teach them science? And what strategies can you do to reach those young people? It's rare to have that type of course. And so no, colleges of education are not known for equipping pre-service teachers with just tons of and multitudes of instructional strategies that they can apply at any time and leverage in a classroom setting to make their material more engaging and rigorous.
Which is why professional development is so important, because it's aligned to your actual community. Right?
So Summer Institute, to kind of just play off of your statement, Summer Institute is an opportunity where AVID provides professional learning. They use it through strands, so you have to identify what type of teacher are you. And then once you identify what type of teacher you are, they spend 2 days just filling you with instructional strategies to say, now go back to your classroom and use these strategies. And they give you materials that you can take back to your classroom and learn. The learning environment for Summer Institute is the most inspirational, exciting, professional learning environment I've ever been around. It's inspiring. I've seen teachers who in my past, I've seen teachers who were kind of just going through the motions, go to Summer Institute and come back a different person, a different professional. And many of them would say, well, because I never learned this. I've been in the classroom for 20 years. I never learned some of these strategies before. And again, it's not about teaching you a certain curriculum, because you have teachers from all over the country coming together who are teaching the same thing. But now you're learning how to apply your curriculum in a unique way. It also, teachers have said to me, they dislike going to professional development opportunities during the school year. It's actually an added burden, because now you're away from school, you have to plan for a substitute, and then you have to prepare for whatever issues have emerged when you were gone. To have a Summer Institute where you are away and you can focus on your learning, and you don't have to worry about getting back to the classroom next week, people feel it's liberating. The last thing is you send a team to the professional learning, and that team gets to come together and talk about that culture that we referenced earlier in terms of how do you want to energize your school culture as a result of this training. It's something that is very special, and I think in our profession we shy away from investing in our teachers from a professional learning standpoint. We're one of the few professions in America where we don't just outwardly say you need to invest in people and their professional learning if they're going to grow. We need to invest more into staff and their professional learning and make sure that it's something that is energizing, but more importantly, teachers will say something that they can walk away from and apply right away. Teachers hate going to a professional learning opportunity and it's just you're being taught that, kind of like this today. AVID training is a little more engaging. and it gives you a lot more strategies and structure and fun. Yes.
So you may get to this, and if you're going to get to it in a minute, then I don't mean to disrupt your presentation, but we met and discussed, and then there was some conversation subsequent to that with a teacher who went to an AVID school that I talked to, and how is this going to look like about pulling kids out or not pulling kids out or arranging children by level, or how is this going to change that? Or
It doesn't.
Going to change that?
So we went and visited a school in Rockdale County called Sims Elementary School, and they do leveling. They level at that school, but that's not indicative of elementary AVID.
So that's just something they're doing separate.
That's just what Rockdale County and that elementary school has chosen to do. That is not a prerequisite or something that we would do by going to elementary AVID.
Because we had talked at one point about how when you're pulling the gifted kids out to go this way and the EIP kids out to go this way, and they're walking all over the building, and then you leave the kids in the middle, or you leave the kids in the classroom who don't need anything special either direction. It's a constant message like you're not either end of special. And so instead we talked about kind of pushing professionals into the classroom, utilizing the exact same professionals in the building, but pushing them into the classroom as opposed to pulling kids out. Is that AVID, or is that, what is that?
So that's not AVID either.
Okay.
The grouping of students has nothing to do with AVID.
So AVID is just a methodology.
It's a methodology. It's a methodology of using these strategies. It's a methodology of looking at a school from this perspective of instruction, systems, leadership, and culture. That's AVID. And so how students are grouped, that's a school decision that is separate from the application of this college and career readiness system.
Okay. There's some confusion out there about that.
I think people went to Rockdale and Sims Elementary School and they've made that connection, and that's too bad.
Yeah. And then you and I engaged today with an email, and the full board read it too, or maybe you didn't get to it, but about gifted and talented and all of that. You've addressed this, but this is, so I could be wrong, I'm not gifted certified, but I view a lot of these things as some of the gifted strategies for enrichment, right? When you're teaching enriching kids. And a lot of the criticism that I hear from people who have children who are not in the gifted program, and they're like, why can't everybody do the Egypt project? Why can't everybody think critically about, why does it only have to be the special kids that get to learn in depth about Egypt or whatever? Why can't my kid do that great project too? And that's a constant criticism. However, on the flip side of that, we get, there's also the not wanting to take away and water down the gifted program by not serving those kids exactly. So how, gifted is going to stay gifted, or
Yes.
gifted is going to stay gifted?
Gifted stays gifted. But this is really an equity issue, because every child should get the Appleseed project, or every child should get the Egypt, whatever that is in education. That's pervasive in education, where certain kids get certain exposure to rigor. So as I've been using the word rigor, certain kids get exposed to a level of rigor, and some kids don't. And so AVID provides that level of rigor for all students, not just the gifted and talented students.
And then, so some critic would say, but if you have kids who don't have basic skills, how can you ignore the fact that some of them don't have these basic skills? And that's been the focus, is trying to get these basic skills so you don't have time for Egypt or whatever, fill in the blank.
I think that goes into the perception and expectation gaps. So they may not have the skills, but kids, so it's the equivalent of, but they have other skills. They may not have the academic skills that emerge on paper with a test, but if you don't expose them to more rigor, it'll never grow. It'll never grow. They will always stay level 1 students. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Totally. I agree with that.
And so I guess from the kind of questions that I'm hearing, I'm concerned that we seem to want to bring equity, but we also want to ensure that there's inequity in how the gifted is treated, how IB is treated. Are we kind of conflicting ourselves a little bit here? Because I thought that gifted would just get stronger, IB would just get stronger, and the kids in the middle would have a shot at gaining these skills that would allow them to get into the more critical thinking kinds of things and to explore the same information that they're getting with the view of actually benefiting from asking those questions and learning how to process that information differently. That's how I synthesize this. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's been there's just been discussion in the community about how it's going to affect the different programs, and I want clarity on that.
I wanted to ask the question that made me wonder too, so that's why I was trying to just make sure that I read what I read.
See, I mean, the way I read it, and I think all these slides, I think the one with the research-based, the Costa level of questioning, Dr. Means,
Yes, sir.
is the most telling, because as a retired teacher, I mean, it's real easy to say, well, everybody can define a word. You know, you look it up in the dictionary and you write down the definition and then you memorize it, and that's that gathering piece. But I think that there's a sense of that until we do that, then you can't really hypothesize what that concept of that word means can be expanded upon. And I think that we have this idea of this step learning, which in actuality is not how people learn. Does that make sense? I mean, I feel like that you can learn a new word and at the same time evaluate what that meaning of that word is in the various contexts, and not just say, okay, this class will define all the words, and then once we know all the words, then we can step up and we can begin to compare the words or distinguish them, and then we go up to actually hypothesizing. And I think that we have this step-by-step way of thinking the way people learn, but it's not how we learn. And I think a lot of kids just never get to that top.
So it's interesting, we just, we celebrated the life of Linda Brown, the little girl that was at the center of the Brown versus Board of Education case. It's interesting that we celebrate her life. We still have segregated schools. It's just that everyone just walks into the same school. So we have a segregated learning experience. They're in the same school. And so if you slice off a group of kids and they go to this classroom and a couple other kids go to the EIP and some kids stay in the middle, you're still segregating the kids. They just happen to be attending the same school. And so that's why I'm so passionate about AVID, because it breaks down the segregation of programming. It breaks down the segregation of opportunity and access. Because every kid, the way that we're constructing our system, the way this system is constructed right now, every child doesn't have access to rigor. Exactly. Every child does, and so I share the data not to say we're not doing something well, it's to say we need to fix what we're currently doing. AVID is just one of those components where we create access for all children. That slide that I showed you where it talks about knowing and acting and going, that's also a component of having access. There's certain families who know you have to fill out a certain form to go to college. You have to fill out your tax form. Families just know that process. There's some kids who don't have access and don't have that information. AVID breaks down some knowledge that some people have, and now it creates a space where all students have access. Your question, Mr. Bybee, of, well, how many students should have AP? Every child should have at least one AP experience. But that's a culture of belief. Because I believe every child in this school system has the ability, they have the intellectual ability to take at least one AP course. But that breaks down, again, it gets to that belief system of, do we believe as a system that every child can take an AP course? I believe they can. And so that's where going through Summer Institute is not a new curriculum. It's not a new curriculum. I want to be clear about that. And it's not taking away something from people. I think those are all fair concerns if you don't know about what this is. And that's why I front-loaded a lot of this presentation to say a lot of the misconceptions and misunderstanding, I don't know what place it comes from. I have to assume it comes from a place of just not knowing and being inquisitive and wanting to learn more. But if it's coming from a place of, we've gone through this before, is this just a here we go again moment, that's fair. Let's put that on the table. And what I'm sharing with you now is that we have building principals and a very excited teaching staff that says, no, this isn't like other initiatives. We're actually being supported. We're actually getting training around it. So let's just, I mean, if we're going to be brass tacks, before, you know, I don't like to go into the past, but let's be candid with one another. If we are a one-to-one school district with technology, the fact that we have 2 instructional technology specialists out of a district of 14,000 students and 21 schools, we're not investing into what we say we are. If we're one-to-one, then you have to support one-to-one. If we're not one-to-one, let's just say we're not one-to-one. You speak a lot with your budget. You speak a lot, and it sends a message to teachers. And so if teachers are skeptical and a little fearful of, here's another process where we're saying we're going to support this, but we're really not, that's not how we're doing this. We're investing in sending a lot of teachers to Summer Institute and getting them the proper training and committing to continue to support them once they come back. So this, I hope that it feels different to people. It is different. And the fact that principals ultimately had the final say on if their school was going to go with this system is I don't believe principals had the choice to say, are we going to go one-to-one in our school? I don't believe that was the model. And so I understand that people can be skeptical and curious, but let's have the conversation versus jumping to conclusions about what the intent of what this program is, what this system is. What this system is at the core is about breaking down the inequities that we know are here. We have to try something. I assumed when you hired me, you wanted me to try something. You were very explicit in saying, we want you to address the students in the middle, but at the same time continue to keep that rigor up for students who are gifted and talented, and let's bring up the kids who are in EIP. AVID is one of those very important pieces to that strategy. We want to show you a video.
I became a teacher because I wanted to provide students with everything that I wanted from my teachers.
I firmly believe there is no more important, no more noble profession than education.
Teaching is more of a calling than it is a career.
There's not enough words to measure the impact that we have on students and their families.
It's not about us. It's we create the opportunities, we find the opportunities, and that student walks through the door.
It goes beyond just teaching them your subject. It really does.
Even the smallest things that we say and do can have an enormous impact on someone's life.
We have the ability to help kids succeed, to surpass the things that they think they can do.
I went to AVID Summer Institute and I saw the passion that these teachers had. I saw the effect that a teacher can have on a student beyond the classroom, in the community.
when I met AVID. I had no idea what I was getting into, and before the year was over, I got it. It made sense that this entire campus that I was teaching at was about to change.
The first year coming at AVID is completely overwhelming. And if you're not a little afraid and nervous, then you probably haven't been paying attention.
There's a vibe. You can feel the vibe on the campus.
I like the fact that all of our students are valued and their culture is valued.
AVID allowed me to see the instruments in my room, and I felt like I was always a great conductor. And so now, all the horns are playing, the cellos are strumming, the guitars are playing, the piano is twinkling, and everybody's enjoying the sound of the orchestra.
The biggest change is the culture. It's more of a college-going culture. Kids think in big picture now. If you're on that stage giving your best and using all your teacher tools, then you know you got them.
AVID is hope for teachers because it gives teachers the tools to connect with and help students succeed.
AVID has truly made a more effective teacher.
You're changing somebody's life. You're, in some cases, creating somebody's life. You have the chance to make a young person the person that they don't even know they are.
So what are you going to do to keep your kids engaged? What can we do together? Where can we go together? What can we, again, build together? Don't give up. And if you don't give up, then your kids will see it. They won't give up.
Students to conquer whatever it is they want in life.
Thanks. Any other questions? I want to spend a lot of time in that FAQ. I think a lot of questions that I've heard in the community were addressed in the frequently asked questions. Want to make sure. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I really appreciate the FAQ and the emphasis on doing things that are supported by research. What was provided in the appendix, I think it was Appendix A, from the What Works Clearinghouse, that was a rebuttal to negative research.
Yes.
So what I'm interested in is there positive research that we can be looking at with AVID that would show, for example, closing the gap on test scores or something else?
So on their website, they have an entire site that talks about research, and I think I included the link. If I didn't, I'll send you the link. But there's research studies showing the impact of AVID at local school systems at that level. And we'll try to pull up that link before the end of the night.
I think what most impressed me about this entire journey with AVID is the fact that it will have measurements, and we actually will be implementing a program that has a plan to measure its effectiveness. That is a first for me. In the past, we waited for the test scores. And so I'm really, really pleased that that element is here for this program, and I hope it's something that we can duplicate across other programs that we have in the district.
So Dr. Means, part of the school-wide define mentions AVID school-wide leadership and school-wide culture. And if there's training for teachers, is there training for principal and leaders in the school to change the culture of our school?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me about that?
Sure. So they have a strand on school leadership, and the school leadership not only is for principals, but it's also for teacher leaders. AVID really believes in teacher voice, and so there's leadership training for teacher leaders to lead those site teams, those AVID site teams. And through the AVID site teams, you change your culture. In fact, there's an unspoken rule that the AVID site team should not be led by the principal. You should identify a teacher leader or two teacher leaders who will then talk and lead those site team meetings that discuss, so how is our culture today? And how can we make our culture stronger in terms of using effective teaching strategies, creating a more college and career readiness environment, and encouraging not only students but families to understand the pathways that they can go. And so when you do AVID well, you're engaging families. You're having family nights where you are exposing them to post-secondary opportunities.
Right, but it still, as you mentioned, starts at the top, so to speak, to establish the culture that we want in all of our schools.
Yes, ma'am.
So it has to be.
So it starts with the principal, but that site team is really important.
And I understand the importance of that, but the leadership at every school needs to understand that too, that is, you're participating in that. And I think that's important that the teachers have the support to understand that they're changing.
Yes.
And to support that.
I think that's why the gentleman in the video said it's scary. You know, your culture is changing. And your current environment of maybe having flat expectations, that's going to change. There's going to be an energy if you implement AVID well of serving all students.
And that's my point again. To be able to implement it, it requires the support. It's all of them down.
Yes.
In terms of what does this look like on the ground in terms of people getting trained at, you know, this first summer, going to the Summer Institute? What do they ever, if you have almost an entire district of this size, do they ever come to the district and do the Summer Institute?
Sure.
How many folks are we sending away versus the possibility of training more people here? And what does that look like in terms of?
We're mandated to go to Summer Institute in year one. They want you to go to Summer Institute the first year. You have to go. In the future, they call it path training. You can have it locally, and you can conduct it locally and train more of your people. And so that's also a possibility. I've asked for a waiver from AVID Center to see if we can do a path training here in addition to Summer Institute. They're contemplating the request. We're sending nearly 200 staff members to 3 different locations. And it's really based on dates. And so for a few of our schools, there were some dates in mid-June that just needed to work due to family requirements and people having surgeries, and you name all the different factors. And so we'll be sending at least 2 schools to Denver, Clark Middle and BHL, maybe even Coyle. And then we have, we're considered the Eastern Division of AVID, and so we would go to Orlando and Tampa, and those are the 2 other options. I see that there's a hand in the audience. Typically at a board meeting, is not open to the public, and so I don't want to be disrespectful. It's just, but I'm always available if there's a question. Yes, sir.
So of these 200 people, how are these 200 people being selected?
Principals. So the uniqueness about AVID is that typically it is principal driven. And principals are the ones who actually make these decisions. And so that's why I felt it was important for principals to say, are you on board or not? And that's why you have 19 of the 21 saying they're ready. The 2 that have chosen not to join the first year of implementation, they just want to watch and see what happens. They're not saying that they're opposed to AVID. In fact, they are likely to jump on and join us in year 2. They just felt that with other initiatives they had going in their school, they wanted to go through that process. And principals were very judicious in making their selection of which teachers they were going to send to Summer Institute, because they realized it's an investment. They want to get the right people who are going to change the culture and to make that difference that we all want to see in our schools.
I'm sorry, those teachers who do go, what does next year look like for them in terms of, I mean, because you need to have space to actually kind of roll the stuff out yourself. You know, I don't know how to.
Well, I think it starts with support. I think it starts with support and empowerment. would be the two words I would use. We want to support them, and we also want to empower them. Schools that implement AVID well, they change. So you don't even call your, I've referenced this before, you don't even call your faculty meetings anymore. You should call them faculty learning meetings. Because now, instead of going through the laundry list of things that should be happening in your school, you're getting together as a faculty to learn greater instructional strategies. And you're learning together, which is rare in schools. Typically, you have a faculty meeting and everyone kind of sits together in their teaching team, and the principal talks at you about here's what's coming next. Here's what we need to learn and know about milestone testing. Get ready. And if you change the culture of even your faculty meetings to say, no, this is faculty learning. And today, two teachers from our AVID site team is going to teach us how to use Wicker strategies in a unique way. That's very powerful. One other element, I think you will be interested in this, Mr. Davis, in particular, AVID also has a strand. Yeah, I talked about all the different strands for 9th grade teachers, 4th grade math teachers. They have a culturally relevant teaching strand. And so they teach culturally relevant teaching strands. How do you teach culturally relevant instructional strategies in a classroom, regardless of what you teach? So they've been leaders in that space as well. There's a level of excitement, I think often, and I'll conclude with this, sometimes we get caught up with what the critics have to say. We get caught up with what naysayers are going to say. That should not drown out the excitement that is throughout this school system. And typically people who are excited and positive, they don't feel a need to have to rise up and speak. And so what typically happens in organizations, regardless of the organization, is the naysayers and the negative people who have the platform. And so I would be remiss if I didn't tell you, people are excited about this. They're ready to move in this direction. And again, as I stated before, I don't know any initiative where 100% of every single person is on board with it. That's rare to find, even when it's good. And so I want to leave you with, there are 19 excited schools with 19 excited principals because they chose to do it. And you have nearly 200 staff members who are excited about learning and growing and becoming better instructional leaders in their classrooms and their schools. This will change our culture. This will change how we teach. This will change how we do business. And it goes back to that slide that I showed earlier. When adult behavior changes, then the system changes. And when the system changes, kids change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very important. I know it. Clap.
I'll clap.
Well, it's worth the time and the investment because I think it is significant of a decision. So I appreciate that. We are going to move on.